So I wanted to talk to you all today about something I have never talked about, I don't think, and it's really interesting. And it's sort of mostly I just want to share it with you, food for thought. Don't go home and say, oh God, I don't have any some Vega. I never had an experience. I mean, it's just food for thought. It's something that was pretty important to me at Forest Refuge this time. It's kind of like an interesting combination of events, and so I thought it would be interesting to share it with you, and maybe on some level it will be of use to you. Let's just start with this. I used to read this. I love this. This is like a Zen prayer that they say in the Zen temples called the Evening Gatha. I love this. Let me respectfully remind you that life and death are of supreme importance. Time swiftly passes by and opportunity is lost. Each of us should strive to awaken. Awaken. Take heed. Do not squander your life. Not a bad thing, right? What do you think? Would that be such a terrible thing to sort of like put on your refrigerator? Terrible thing to say at night. Let me respectfully remind you, life and death are of supreme importance. Time swiftly passes by and opportunity is lost. Each of us should strive to awaken. Awaken. Take heed. Do not squander your life. So this is a pretty standard. This is a Zen prayer that you can hear in the Zen temple. And that whole thing of awaken is sort of what we're hopefully all interested in. So, so I want to just tell you, some of you have heard this story probably 4 times. It gets kind of boring telling your story over and over and over. I did this. When I was 35 years old, we've got a straggler coming in. You have to pay extra when you come late, ma'am. It's double. The fee is double. Yeah.
I have 100.
So this is kind of done. So when I was 35 years old, I lived in New York City. Had lots of friends, a million friends, and I took a trip to that wild, strange place called Los Angeles. Took a trip from New York. I remember, that was a big deal for me. I had like 5 or 6 friends from New York who had given up, trying to make it in New York, and they decided, well, I'll just try, actors and actresses and musicians, and so they moved to California, see if they could get a better opportunity out here. So I had all these places to stay, all these friends to meet, and I came out, and so I came out for, I think it was for a month, and I remember it was July of 1976. I was 4 years old. Give or take a few decades. So I was 35 years old, and so it's a kind of personal, and you don't need to hear any of that. But a lot of, things just didn't work out very well on the trip, and just stay in this place and things with all my friends, and I began to see that, that their lives, they had gone on with their lives, right? And so I was just sort of like a visitor in their lives. But one day I was walking down the street in LA, and paused for a moment and happened to see my reflection in the plate glass window. And it's sort of impossible to explain what happened, but something, it's like an epiphany. But I'm looking in the mirror and I start sobbing. I mean, just sobbing, just tears, just absolutely just rolling down the face. Shirt is wet with tears. this, it came upon me, this feeling of, I don't like who I am. I had been sort of like this irrepressible, marvelous child in a male, a grown-up body, and I pulled that off quite well. But something in me realized that my life was not going to work out. It just was not going to work out who I was. It wasn't going to work out. And there was this thought, really, that I don't think that I would really want to be this person at 41 or 42. 35, it kind of worked. But at 41, I thought, this is not going to work. And it was a profound moment. In some ways, it was probably the most, well, I've had a lot of life-changing moments in my life. But that was a biggie. I knew that I had to change. I knew that I didn't work. That who this was a child, and I had no understanding of how the child mind could become an adult mind. I stood there and processed like this. Well, go to therapy, and I thought, I'm not going to therapy. I mean, it would be a waste of time. At that point, it would have been a waste of time. So it was an astonishing moment, and what I came up with, and this happened. I have no idea how long this went on, but I mean, it went on for weeks. I got back to New York. I decided I had to give up the life that I had. I had to give it up entirely. I couldn't figure any other way to start some unbelievable process of change that for me. It was like some revolution had to happen. So I decided to give up everything that I had in terms of my rent-controlled apartment right off the Hudson River, my wonderful dog Willie, my Doberman Pinscher, and I decided to take everything that I had, put it into money, and to go to India and to study. And to go to Crete first. So that's what I did. It took me almost a year to get that all together. But literally, I kind of just blew up I really sort of gave up the world that I had. I knew that I had to put myself into a totally unfamiliar, unknown. I had to go out of the known. And that was I knew instinctively in some way that would start some process of growth in me. Maturation. So a year after that happened in Los Angeles, pretty soon after that, I was in a little room in Crete overlooking the water. And I'll tell you this before we get on, because I was going to sort of like wait and come back to it. But for some unknown reason, I had a pen with green ink, and I made a little sign, and I put it on the wall, and it said, "Somehow the sense of urgency still escapes me." I don't exactly know where that came from, because, I mean, urgency had blown me out of my life, right, and had moved me into Crete. But I do remember that I would walk around on the beach, and I would write and journal, and I took all of these religious books. People mailed me all of my big, thick Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, all the books, religious books. But there was some feeling inside of, why don't I feel urgent? And it felt to me like I was supposed to feel urgency. So now let's go back to the Forest Refuge, just this time, a month ago. The first Dharma talk of a teacher that I like very much. She's been there before, and she's a really neat lady, and we like each other. And we actually were both joking before I had an interview, and so I'm 72, and she's just a little bit older. And we were talking about my cataracts. She was very interested in it. It's the things that people in their 70s talk about, right? And she says, I've heard that. You really see very clearly when you have that surgery. Is that true? I said, well, out of this eye you do. But I said, this one, I can't see anything. By the way, I'm having that surgery tomorrow morning. I said that to you all, not to her. Tomorrow morning. Hopefully we'll get this one cleared up. So anyway, that evening she gives a talk on Samvega, the Buddhist term Samvega, which means a spiritual urgency. And I hadn't thought about this subject in years, and so her talk was lovely. It was a lovely talk, and I'm going to share a little bit about probably there are many Buddhist sutras about even devas coming down. Like here you've got a nun walking, and nuns are in this a lot, right? And then monks too. But so you're walking around, they're doing their practice, and they're just completely like lost in it. You know, they're sort of like doing it, but they've lost the connection to why they're doing it, what it's about. They've lost the connection to awaken, take heed, do not squander your life. It would be very easy to get into a monastery and be doing it, wouldn't it? Just think about it. Day after day after day, doing your practice, getting up. So probably the real, the way this goes back is the story that you have all heard of the four messengers. The Buddha, when he was a young prince, saw someone who was very old and decrepit. I don't think he saw me. He saw someone old and decrepit. He saw someone really sick. He saw a corpse, and so he saw these three things, and he had lived a life that was so protected. So his father supposedly kept him from seeing these things because his father wanted him to stay in the world. He wanted him to stay in the world and to become, to replace him and to perhaps even become more powerful than he. The fourth one I'll tell you in a minute. But so he saw these three things, and I would say that he had a moment of Samvega, meaning shock. It's described as a moment of shock, and then a moment maybe of remorse and or despair, right? I mean, because then you look back and you see that, suddenly you wake up to the way you've been kind of like asleep within your life, just sort of robotically living it, So that could be called, you might call that remorse. And also almost for a moment a feeling of hopelessness, of, oh my God, if you think about samsara, I'm lost, I'm in this endless robotic cycle, how could I ever get out of this? That would be, the essence of Samvega. And so really, that's where I guess this term comes from in Buddhism. It would be, in other words, this is precisely what happened to the Buddha. What on earth could have been so powerful to move him out of his life? The palace, he had a beautiful wife, he had a little child. A lot of people think, well, that's pretty tacky, leaving your wife and child. And, I would say that the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of Buddhists who have lived, really, there are 400 million now, or 400 to 500 million, so over the past 2,000, probably over 2,000 years, 2,600 years, a lot of people would say that they were glad he left the palace, even if his wife didn't. The nice thing is that his wife and his child both finally joined the Sangha. That's Samvega. In other words, something so powerful, it struck him like a blow, and something in him woke up to the fact that, oh my God, I'm caught in this endless cycle. And then the other word is pasada, which means clarity, and it's also described as like something comes over you, serene confidence. In other words, that balances out that shock. That something comes over you that says, I can find a way out of this. Because if you don't have that second thing, you can go right pretty much into just giving up, despair. What's the point of this? So I love when we chant the sharing of the blessings, and we say, the Buddha is my excellent refuge, the Dharma my protection unsurpassed, and the Sangha my supreme support. I think it's very easy to overlook the fact that we have a path out of this mess of unconscious robotic living. So this is the meaning of the other part of it. So he had this kind of confidence, that allowed him to go into the wilderness and to practice for 6 long years. I had the confidence that allowed me to give everything up and go off into India for 14 months or 15 months. And I've thought about it. So anyway, so she gives the Dharma talk about, and it's a kind of appropriate. That's her first talk for the people who were taking 1 month, right? That was her opening Dharma talk, and I thought, I've never done that before. I thought, how appropriate to give a talk on, right, Samvega for someone getting ready to do a month retreat. And so the question, she didn't really hit this. She's a very gentle person, much like me. She is very gentle, so she didn't push it. But really, the question that I kind of thought about was, it's like, so there's some Samvega, that shock that hits you of awareness of your of the trap that we may all be in, and the other one is complacency. Right? Complacency. The opposite of Samvega would be, wouldn't it, Cindy? It would be complacency. A kind of, well, I'm okay. Things could be worse. Have you ever heard that one? Right? Things could be worse. So, I've heard so many Dharma talks, and I'm so jaded. I mean, really and truly. I mean, really, they'll say, tonight we're talking about mindfulness, and so I'll say, oh my God, I feel. But that's just me. That's just being jaded. I mean, so sometimes it's not so easy for a Dharma talk to really seep in for me, because I've heard, But as the days went on, just questions started popping in. Complacency? Me? Moi? Complacent? I thought, well, no, I'm not being complacent. I'm coming back to the Forest Refuge August the 1st to September the 17th. And then I'm planning on maybe even a 3-month retreat in 2015. And then all of a sudden I started thinking, wow, you've got your life kind of laid out there in front of you, don't you, Vic? So I started getting really uncomfortable about this idea that, oh my God, have I really slipped back into this place where I really just sort of got my life mapped out? It's all known. Nothing unknown looming in front of me, thank God. So she, she disappeared. She was supposed to start giving interviews, and the next day, and she didn't. And so there was a little note on the bulletin board that said she was not feeling well. So I had this instinct that her energy didn't feel so good to me. So anyway, she actually went to the hospital and was in the hospital for 2 solid weeks. After she gives this talk on spiritual urgency. I told her just as I left, I said, you should never give a talk on spiritual urgency again. So she's fine, but I don't really know what that condition was. And so I'm walking down the hall about 3 days later contemplating Samvega and complacency. And I turn a corner and black out. So I caught the wall, and so I didn't hit the floor, but I literally just blacked out. And it was really serious. It was really interesting. It didn't scare me at all. And it felt to me like it was one of the messengers, right? The Buddhist messengers, right? The old age, sickness, old age. It felt to me like this was a message that it, again. And in Buddhism, that's the first, there are 8, I think, I don't know what you would call it, 8 elements to what would create Samvega, but obviously the biggie is death. Right, obviously. That we have not forever. A friend of mine, a singer, she and I had a nightclub act together, and I'll never forget. I woke up New Year's Day, 1967, I believe, and so she had a little Volkswagen, so we would go to her gigs in her little Volkswagen, and I saw this. She was the first traffic fatality of January 1st, and I saw her guitar case lying on the road. It had been smashed, and someone wrote a song and said her name was Catherine, and the song was "I'm Catherine, I'll live to 110." I don't think that some part of us tends to believe that. I'll live to 110, maybe at least 90. But so the Buddha relentlessly taught and teaches that we don't have forever. And the truth is, how long do you have? A year? How long do you have for your practice? I mean, just if you say, if you become abstract and you say, well, the odds are, what is it? Men live to 70, whatever, 80. The odds are I've got 20 more years. I've got 3 more years. But it's really not an abstract question, is it? It's like, how much time do you have left to do this practice? And I think it's a brilliant question, and I think it is a question that we all run from. I run from it, and so that's why I said when I blacked out at the Forest Refuge, I just thought, okay, I just took it as okay, and she's in the hospital, when you're in the hospital for 2 weeks, that ain't nothing, right? So, the fourth one, I didn't tell you the fourth one, did I? He saw the 3 messengers: sickness, old age, sickness, and death. And then the fourth that he saw was a practicing monk. He saw someone practicing, spiritual practice. And that gave him his answer. So that's where the pasada came, right? I mean, the Samvega came from that, the shock of knowing that each of us will experience sickness, old age, and death if we're lucky. If you're lucky, you get old age. If you're not lucky, you just get sickness and death, right? And so that fourth one that he saw gave him the path to perhaps the confidence, you might say, to move out of the shock of seeing the situation. So this has happened to me. That was at 36, and at 46, I did the same thing. I blew my life up and went to Barry. I started meditating for 3 years. So I've had this uncanny. It's so funny. That's so ego. I mean, I say I did it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it at all. Something has just blown my life up about every 10 years. It's amazing, and so it's amazing when I look back. So for me personally, when I was there, I realized that I have to do it again. I don't really know exactly how that's going to transpire, but it's clear that I have to do it again because I've gotten too comfortable and too locked into my little world, and I'm not ready to give up this quest. So I want to share with you one of the favorite sentences I've ever heard in a movie. I love this sentence so much, and I wrote it down. It says, I didn't write it. So how many people saw The Beautiful Mind? That's wonderful. This is wonderful. That movie actually touched me. I worked with people. I worked with someone who was having something of a similar problem. And I remember even discussing to them, like, well, you know that that's not there even though you see it. It was amazing. So his wife, after she struggled with him and struggled with him and struggled with everything, and then he wants to go off of the antipsychotic drugs. And of course the psychiatrist is saying you can't do that. That's unheard of. And she says, in the most utterly wonderful words, she says, I need to believe that something extraordinary is possible. So you see, I believe something extraordinary is possible. I always have, since the day I was born. I mean, not just for me. I believe that something extraordinary is possible for all of us. And that's why, this whole thing of, that all the worshiping, people make a deity out of the Buddha, which I think is so stupid. It's just unbelievably stupid. Ma'am, we don't have any land. No, really and truly, though, it's just so stupid to me because really, that something extraordinary was possible. Right? I mean, that a human being did that. That's the miracle. What's the miracle if it was a god, right? I mean, if it came down from, that's ridiculous, all of that. And so a lot of people need to do that. In Mahayana Buddhism, they need to do that. It's fine. A lot of people need to elevate somebody else, someone else. But just the idea that a human being, right? You, Mary, that you have the capacity, right, to make something extraordinary happen. I just think that's one. So that's pasada. That's where the confidence comes, right, out of the shock of, oh my God, what a mess I have made of my life. And most of us have made a mess of our lives. I mean, I'm sorry if you think you haven't. That's fine. And maybe you didn't. I did. I mean, but not just once. I've done it more than once. So I'm going to end. I love this poem. I love this poem. I'm going to end with this little poem. And when I started, really, you may never have looked into a plate glass window and seen your image and fallen totally apart, and said, oh my God. But each of us have our moments, of a shock of looking and suddenly realizing that we've been asleep for 20 years, that we've been asleep, that we've gotten lost into a robotic, unconscious life of complacency. And by the way, just to add this on the top of it before I end, that it's easy to confuse this with what we in the West experience with anxiety, right? Angst, anxiety. That's not what Samvega is at all. It's a shock of seeing, right? And then it's not like it lasts. That's why I was said in Crete, somehow the sense of urgency escapes me, because later I thought, oh well, of course it does. Because the truth is, you can't, that thing that hits you, then it does vanish. And then you just pray that it'll come back when it's time. After you've done your stuff and you've moved on and had a spurt of growth, then you're gonna go to sleep again. Everybody does, I do, and then we hope that Samvega comes back again. Boom. And then you wake up and then you start again. So here's the way Mary Oliver described it. I have to hold this close to my eyes because I have a cataract. My God. I thought, you see, I'm so full of it. I'm making a joke, and it's the truth. But I was making a joke about that. It's the truth. I had some reading glasses, and I didn't read. This is called The Journey. One day, you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug at your ankles, mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations through their melancholy, though the melancholy was terrible. It was already late, friends. She didn't say friends, I did. It was already late enough, and a wild night and the road full of fallen branches and stones. We all have fallen branches and stones in our road. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own. That kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life that you could save. The only life we can save is our own. I love this poem. So that was my talk on Samvega.